Donald Trump is going to take over Greenland. It's going to happen. A lot of people are scared. We're going to talk about it. I hope you're locked in. Not everything is what it seems. Hello guys, welcome to the channel where we try to make sense of things and read between the lines of all things that are going on. Today we're going to look at what I think is the story of the day from NBC News. Trump announces framework deal on Greenland. Some of you know they are currently meeting at the World Economic Forum, so a lot of things are being talked about at the moment. So let's get right into it. They're going to talk. I'm going to chime in.
The president tonight in the heart of Europe abruptly backing off two bold threats regarding his ongoing quest to control Greenland, tariffs and military action, posting he's reached a framework of a future deal with the Secretary General of NATO. But when pressed,
a future deal, that could mean anything. So okay. A future deal, sure.
Providing no further details.
Well, we have a concept of a deal.
Including this proposed
Oh, we have a concept of a deal. It's fantastic. We have the best concepts you've ever seen.
Timeline.
Infinite.
Tonight, the New York Times, citing three senior officials, says NATO member states discussed a compromise in which Denmark would give the U.S. sovereignty over small pockets of Greenland, where the United States could build military bases.
Oh, okay. See, that's the key right there. Military bases, small pockets, small parts of Greenland with military bases. That is the beginning of an occupation, a peaceful occupation, an occupation that is welcome, that is transitioned into something that doesn't feel like an occupation, but that's exactly what that is. The second you put military bases somewhere else, that's an occupation. Look at Venezuela. Venezuela is occupied. I know a lot of people are happy the Maduro regime left. I'm one of them, but the fact of the matter is the U.S. is never leaving. And that's a fact. They are going to set up their own system there, and it begins with military bases.
All of it as the populist president arrived at this conference of the global economic elite amid escalating tensions between the U.S. and Europe over his ambition to acquire the Arctic island that has been a Danish territory for 300 years, ruling out sending the U.S. military.
Because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force.
But demanding to go.
I don't have to use force. I have the Jedi Force. They gave me the best force you've ever seen, and I don't have to use it because if I did, it'd be a terrifying thing. But we're not going to use it. Greenland, they know what's best. I'm the best Jedi they've ever seen.
Negotiations to buy Greenland, arguing it's a national security priority for the U.S. against looming Russian and Chinese threats.
We want a piece of...
But that's what NATO's supposed to be for, right? North Atlantic Treaty Organization is supposed to help protect North Atlantic. That's what NATO's supposed to be for. But I understand that NATO is what it is.
Ice for world protection, and they won't give it. They have a choice. You can say yes, and we will be very appreciative, or you can say no, and we will remember.
The European Union retaliating against the president's threats as he was speaking, suspending its trade deal with the U.S., which the president had previously touted as a win. Later, the president changing course, saying he would not impose new tariffs next month, while announcing that new Greenland framework. America's allies have been bracing for the president's visit, and it was anything but a charm offensive, including this jab directed at Canada.
Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements.
That after
he said it right to Mark Carney. And I live in Alberta, so to say something like that is pretty wild, man. Mark, you better watch yourself. And what's Mark Carney going to say?
Garbage day! Huh? No!
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney delivered this rebuke to the U.S. for disrupting the world order.
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition.
Peter joins us now live. Peter, 401ks took a hit yesterday, but we saw stocks surge after today's announcement.
Tom, as soon as the president announced that framework and no new tariffs, the Dow quickly shot up nearly 600 points, making up for most of the major losses yesterday. And as for a compromise that could allow new American bases in Greenland, Denmark has long been open to the U.S. expanding its military presence on the Arctic island as allowed by existing agreements, Tom, that date back decades.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay...
Oh, my goodness. Well, so anyway, I'll tell you what I think is going on here. I think they're setting up what's known as the Club of Rome, which was a plan that was set up, I believe, in 1974, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look into this here. The Club of Rome's 10 Kingdoms plan proposed in their 1974 report, Mankind at the Turning Point, was a geopolitical model dividing the world into 10 large regional blocks to manage resources and governance stemming from limits to growth concerns about overpopulation and environmental limits. I personally think they're going to use Greenland as an energy center for their data centers for AI, for Palantir, for all these things that are going on that are going to be happening with the new digital age. But they're going to set up these systems, these nations rather, they're going to divide the world into 10 nations. If you look at this map here, this is what I think is going to happen. Let me zoom in a little bit here. As you can see, Canada, the US, and Greenland is one single territory. South America and Central America falls under another territory, and so on and so forth. This is very telling because there's a lot of perspectives going on. A lot of people feel like something big is happening. If you watch Dave Chappelle's last special, for example, on Netflix, he talked about a conspiracy. That all of us feel like we live in some sort of conspiracy. I personally think, and I'm no genius, this is the conspiracy, to set up this Club of Rome initiative, these 10 kingdoms, if you will. And if you're a Christian,
It's time.
this is awfully interesting because a lot of folks argue we're in very prophetic times. You know, Jesus talked about when there's convergence of prophecies, we're basically the end of the world type thing. And when the end of the world happens, there will be 10 kingdoms set up under the Antichrist rule. I believe it's Revelation 13. We'll pull it up here. For those of you who are interested, you don't have to. This is just food for thought. If you're not a Christian, I understand, but this is just food for thought. I think it's interesting. Revelation 13. And I saw a beast with 10 horns and 7 heads rising out of the blackness of the sea. On its horns hung 10 crowns, and on its heads were inscribed blasphemous names. A lot of people think the same thing I think, which I think is the right thing. A lot of people think these 10 kingdoms are these 10 horns, right? 10 horns, 10 nations, 10 kingdoms, 10 kings under the beast, which will eventually be the Antichrist. Very interesting stuff. So, these things are just food for thought. You look at this headline from CBC here. Here are the countries joining Trump's Board of Peace so far, which again, not to harp on the biblical thing, but it sounds biblical, the peace that the beast will promise, right? U.S. President Donald Trump launched his new formed Board of Peace on an international stage Thursday as more countries responded to his invitation for a seat at the table, which will initially aim to rebuild Gaza. Now, here are the countries. Check it out. Israel, of course, Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. Through traditional U.S. allies, namely European countries and Canada. So as much as Mark Carney is posturing, again, the U.S. and Canada will go hand in hand all the time. This is part of the Club of Rome initiative. They're going to unite these kingdoms. That's why Mark Carney is on the Board of Peace as well, which, as a Canadian, where the hell did Mark Carney even come from? He's a banker, but no political career. All of a sudden, this guy is everywhere. And again, from CBC here, Carney's Davos speech strikes a chord in Mexico. Remember that separation that Mexico will, be with Central America and South America? This is my thinking, right? Prime Minister Mark Carney's speech at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland resonated in Mexico, a country which, much like Canada, has also been forced to grapple with the mercurial temperament of its much larger and powerful U.S. neighbor. That was a very good speech by Carney from Prime Minister Carney. I don't know if you heard it, says the Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, which many people agree is very allied to Israel. I think they're all part of it, to be honest, folks. I don't think it's a case of Democrats versus Republicans, liberals versus conservatives, Putin versus Zelensky. I really don't think that exists, at least not to the level they say. I think it's us versus them, and they play their little games, their little house of cards to divide power. That's what I think is going on. So something that's very interesting, we'll get to the crux of the video here. I like speculation. I asked Chat GPT the following, and I hope you'll follow me on this too. It's very, very telling. I say to Chat GPT, I want you to do some speculating. Given the current state of geopolitics as of today, after the capture of Nicolas Maduro by the U.S. government and the impending annexation of Greenland by the United States, how do you think this could lead to World War III? Using your most educated guesses, can you create a timeline of events? So obviously it cites some sources and it tells you kind of where it's coming from. So January 3rd, 2026, U.S. captures Maduro, breaks that down. The immediate global reaction, as we know, everyone was like, what are you doing? Trump was like, I'm going to do it anyway. It is what it is. Suck my balls. And he did it. So that's what it was. Domestic U.S. fracture. As we know, the U.S. is currently, falling apart. Things that are happening in Minneapolis, the civil war in the U.S. looks for a lot of people to be imminent. Who knows, right? But here we go. Here's the interesting thing. Renewed U.S. push for Greenland, which Trump started talking about since he got elected, right? Following the Venezuela action, President Trump reiterates his desire to acquire Greenland. Again, reiterates, he talked about it before. While he rules out overt force, as per Reuters, he hammers NATO allies with the rhetoric and tariffs to push the idea forward. He's trying to make his own United Nations as far as I see. Russian reaction. Russia publicly watches U.S.-Europe tensions with interest, framing the dispute as evidence of Western disintegration, as of AP News. And then here is the speculation in the timeline. 26 to 27. Crisis deepens. Mid-2026, European nations impose diplomatic sanctions on U.S. officials involved in Greenland pressure tactics. Denmark mobilizes a limited European force for joint exercises in Greenland with NATO. Latin American coalition, remember, Latin America branches off from the North American kingdoms in this Club of Rome map, which, again, you're welcome. You should study the Club of Rome. Don't just take my word for it. Very interesting stuff. Channels like Call for an Uprising, Enter the Stars. A lot of people have done a lot of research. Russia and China ramp up diplomatic support for nations opposing the U.S. Naturally, the Global South forums condemn U.S. actions, and then early 2027, a diplomatic stalemate. U.S. insists on Greenland negotiations. Denmark refuses. NATO allies are split, and then the breakdown in institutions. UN Security Council becomes gridlocked. U.S. vetoes criticism or Venezuela intervention. Russia and China veto sanctions related to Arctic posturing. Exactly what I think is going to happen. So far, me and Chat GPT are in agreement. We'll go quickly here. 2028 flashpoints ignite. Arctic tensions peak. Taiwan and South China Sea linkage. China responds by increasing operations near Taiwan after the Russian naval force moves closer, citing defense of Arctic interests, right? That's what Trump is citing. By 2029, global conflict expansion. A trigger incident, according to Chat GPT. A miscalculated naval skirmish, or could be something else, but miscalculation, perhaps between U.S. and Russian forces in the Arctic or between Chinese ships and U.S.-aligned fleets near Taiwan. Very interesting. Alliance responses. NATO invokes collective... God, I can't read today. What a moron. NATO invokes collective defense in response to an attack on a member state tied to the Greenland dispute all the way over 2029. China invokes defense pacts with allies over Pacific incidents. War declaration phase, and then by 2030, potential World War III. All this is just food for thought, of course. We're just speculating, but personally, I think the plan is in effect. I think we're seeing the things we're seeing. So this channel is not just about doom and gloom, the solutions. What should we do about this? And here are my thoughts. I think we live in a time of great uncertainty. That's pretty obvious. What we should do is hang on to the things that obviously matter the most. Hang on to your family, hang on to God, to your faith, to the things that matter, to your hobbies, to your career, to the things that make you fulfilled, to the things that give you a purpose to get up in the morning. Because, as cliche as it sounds, the state of affairs is that the little people have really no control. Unless you have a ton of money, you can't really make a lot of choices. And as much as we can protest and this and that, I don't see a way where we go back to a state where the people actually control things, if we ever did. I think we live in a time, anywhere you look in the West, where it's left and right. You think this way or you think that way. The people in the middle are like, I don't deal with any of you people, so folks isolate. I consider myself to be in the middle most times, the middle way. But it's coming to a point where we're so polarized. I think the Greenland thing is an AI data center. That's the purpose of Greenland, and of course the military stuff. Eventually, Canada's going to be dealing with the U.S. to be annexed because of the oil supply off Alberta and all these things. That's how I see it happening. The energy crisis is going to come to a point where we're going to have to negotiate in Canada with the U.S. to become a territory or to become part of this agreement. And so all these things mean that sovereignty is not what it used to be. Things are changing. So make sure that what's important to you, your soul, if you will, remains untarnished. Protect yourself with things that are wholesome and things that really matter. And with that in mind, we're going to end the video with some good news today. Just to end the segment here. Good News Daily. We have quite a bit to choose from. I thought this one was pretty interesting given what happened in Spain. For those of you who watch the news, a terrible trade derailment. Check this out. Put the volume up here. Sorry, let's go again with the volume. Ain't that something? Young people doing tremendous things. A great individual, Spanish, Who would have thought? But tremendous person. Look at that. So there you go, folks. Despite the doom and gloom, humanity is still very much intact. So hold on to that. Hold on to that as much as you can. Have a few beers, pull your dick out. Just do things that make you happy. Don't pull your dick out in public. Do things that make you happy. As much as you can, and as long as you're not hurting anybody, because what else are you going to do these days? Honestly, that's all we got. But anyway, these are just my ideas.
And ideas are bulletproof.
Subscribe to my channel. It's a fantastic channel. A lot of people say it's the best channel they've ever seen.